Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. This is Shyam Kagud here, taking up the Hindu news analysis for 5th March 2026. Now, before I start, please do give the confirmation that I'm audible and visible for all of you. Those present in the session, please give the confirmation. Done. Thanks a lot. So let's start the discussion now. To begin with, please understand today there is no publication of daily edition. There's no publication because the offices were closed yesterday on account of Holi. I've taken the articles from two newspapers today. One from the Bangalore edition of the Hindu newspaper, but there are one or two articles that I've also taken from one more newspaper, that is Hindustan Times. There was one very important article associated with art and culture. I've taken it from the Hindustan Times. This has been done in order to ensure that the discussion will be comprehensive. You'll be able to understand the current affairs topics from different subjects which are relevant for both prelims as well as mains. If you're liking the discussion, do not forget to hit the like button. If you are yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start, here is a very important announcement. A lot of you keep on commenting in the video asking for the PPTs, right? Asking for the download of the PPTs. All you need to do is scan the QR code that is visible right now. Join the Telegram channel. This is the official Unacademy IAS English Telegram channel. Once the session is over, the PPT will be made available to you. You can download, use it for revision purpose. And second very important announcement. I know a lot of you have started preparing for the UPSC examinations 2027. If you're in need of a guided program, unlike any other, wherein there is a personalized approach given to each of the student, you will be covered or you will be able to cover the prelims as well as the mains syllabus in a very comprehensive manner. You'll have weekly tests, mentorship support, etc. Do reach out to us. You can enroll into the Platinum 2027 batch. The best way to reach out to us is use the number which has been provided in the description part of the video. Reach out to us and we'll guide you regarding the enrollment into our Platinum batch. Now let me start the discussion. First important article, the quiet demographic revolution unfolding in India. Very often when you talk about the growth prospects of Indian economy, for example, you come across a statement which will say India has a potential to achieve a double digit growth rate. One of the very important parameters that you need to consider when you want to achieve this kind of a growth is the availability of human labor. Availability of human labor. And in the context of the human labor, India is said to be having huge availability of labor. Of course, yes, there are certain issues associated with that. But if you can address these particular issues, you can harness the demographic dividend. You can essentially harness the demographic dividend. What is the basic meaning of the term demographic dividend? Dividend essentially means returns. For example, in a company which has shareholders, the shareholders are nothing but the owners. Part of the profits generated by the company are distributed to the shareholders, that is called as a dividend. So in this particular context, what additional growth you can achieve because of this kind of a demography is referred to as demographic dividend. Now in the context of the demographic dividend, there are a lot of pointers which have been provided in the article. Let's understand them one by one. And the most of the discussion is surrounding the concept of total fertility rate. TFR, total fertility rate. Now, what are the important points? Let's start. Point number one, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, along with an institute by the name of IIPS, International Institution for the Population Studies, IIPS, which is located in Mumbai, has published National Family Health Survey. Right now, the data for which survey, round of survey is available for us, NFHS 5 data is available. National Family Health Survey 5. This has been published for the year 2019 to 2021. And one of the very important findings of this particular survey is the fact that the total fertility rate in India has declined, has decreased. And what is the total fertility rate? In the lifetime of a woman, how many birth or how many children are birthed by women? How many children are given birth by a woman in a lifetime is called as a total fertility rate. In the context of India, if you look back in 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, there was always a concern that there is a population explosion that is happening. Population explosion, meaning what? The growth of the population is so high, we are not able to create sufficient number of jobs. We are not able to produce a sufficient quantity of food grains. We are not able to provide sufficient utility services such as water, electricity supply, housing, etc. And this will put a lot of pressure on the whole society. And that was considered as a concern. And various government programs have been implemented in order to control population, in order to address this particular issue of population explosion. And as a result of this, today, the total fertility rate has declined. How much is the average total fertility rate? It is said to be around 1.9, and the replacement level in case of India is said to be 2.1. Essentially meaning, in order to maintain the same population, we need to have a total fertility rate of 2.1. But the TFR, actual TFR, according to the latest NFHS, is below the replacement level. But the problem when you look at this particular TFR is that it is not uniform across whole of India. It is not uniform across whole of India. There are certain states where the TFR rate is much above the national level. And there are certain TFR rates where there are certain states where the TFR rates are much below the national average. And what is the concern associated with that? We will understand in some time. But before we understand the concerns, what has led to the decline? Led to decline in the total fertility rate. What are the reasons behind the decline in the total fertility rate? Some of the important reasons. First one, there is increased emphasis of Government of India to control population. Like I said, the Government of India has implemented multiple policies, multiple measures to control the population. So government policies have yielded results. This is the first very important reason. The second important reason is the education levels, the improvement in education levels. For example, women are more educated today. And when women are more educated, and this is required by the way, when women are more educated, their contribution to the economic activity will suddenly start to increase. The empowerment of the women is going to improve. And that is especially visible in the context of the female labor force participation rate. Female labor force participation rate. Historically, when you see post 2000 in India, India's GDP has increased. The growth rate has increased. There have been multiple years where Indian economy has registered a growth rate of 7%, 8%, etc. But one of the main important concern was the participation of the women in the labor force. And the data that is generally given to you in the books, in the magazines that you come across, is that the labor force participation rate in the context of India is around 20%. But please make an update, right? Please take up this particular update. According to the latest economic survey, the economic survey for the year 25 and 26 states that the female labor force participation rate has increased to 41% now. It has increased to 41%. So there is a higher participation of the women, which will help in empowering them, which will make them financially independent, etc. And that has been made possible because of improvement of education levels. That is the second reason. And the third reason, improvement in the healthcare services as well. Improvement in the healthcare services. I'm pretty sure in your family, or let's say, nobody wants to say that out loud, but let's say in other families, when you have seen, let's say 2 generations before or 3 generations before, the family used to have, let's say the woman used to give birth to 7 children, 8 children, 9 children. And one of the reasons behind that was obviously the healthcare facilities. The healthcare facilities. the non-availability of quality of healthcare facilities, and the lower education levels of the population at that point of time. And not to forget, a lot of these particular children in many of the households would not, right, basically live beyond certain age. They would either have certain, right, let's say problems at the time of birth, or they would face certain issues over a period of time. And a lot of children would not sustain or were not able to live beyond a certain age. And that was one of the reasons why families used to have larger number of children at that point of time. But with penetration of healthcare services, with improvement of the quality of the healthcare services, now each of the family wants to have lesser number of children, because they know that children will survive, children will lead a full life. And the fourth very important reason behind the reduction in the total fertility rate is basically the nuclear families now. Nuclear family system. Earlier, the family used to be joint family. All the people within the family used to live in one house. The size of the family used to be very, very large. And that actually also led to each of these particular, let's say, individual couples to have more number of children. But with, right, let's say, migration patterns emerging, with population shifting to urban India, etc., with families which were joint families earlier becoming nuclear families now, the population per family or per couple, the children per couple, the number has decreased. And a very important role in all of this has to be the maintenance cost. The cost of maintaining a lifestyle. What do you mean by cost of maintaining a lifestyle? The cost of healthcare has increased. Anybody wants to deny? Please do let me know in the chat section. The cost of education has increased. The cost of food grains has increased. The cost of purchasing a home, etc., has increased. Clothing cost of food, right, etc., has, all of it has increased. And when the family realizes that the cost of all of this has increased, they will simply say, we cannot give a quality lifestyle if you have more number of children. We cannot afford this kind of a lifestyle to all the children. If there are 2 children, okay, somehow we can manage to put them into a private, let's say, schools. We can pay capitation fees, ensure that they will have a graduation, etc. But if the number of children increase, then there will be a pressure on the finances of the household. And the household doesn't want to bear this kind of a burden, which will basically affect the quality of the standard or the lifestyle of the whole family now. So these are some of the reasons which have actually led to reduction in the total fertility rate. Is everybody okay? Now, what are the, right, let's say, what are the implications? What are the implications? There are multiple implications associated with the controlling or the reduction of TFR. For example, first one, like I said, there is very visible divide amongst the states. There is very visible divide amongst the states. And again, not to make it a political debate, but it is a political issue in many of the states right now. That is, when you look at the population, TFR is associated with the population at the end of the day. The states which have a higher TFR will end up having a higher population. And when the state has higher population, don't you think that is associated with allocations of finances by, let's say, based on the recommendation of Finance Commission? That is one issue. Second issue is, if the delimitation exercise is conducted, obviously the distribution of the population will also play a very important role in how much of the states are going to get how many seats, let's say, at the Lok Sabha level. And that will also have a larger impact on what is the voting power of individuals coming from these particular states with lower TFR, lower population, higher TFR with higher population. And that is precisely the reason why you must have heard of some of the chief ministers, right, asking the people to have more children in some of the states. Whether it is good or bad, that's a different debate. But you must have heard of these kind of statements. So it has led to a political debate. That is the first issue. And that will also have an influence. The TFR will also have an influence over the financial allocations. That is the second implication. The third implication is, in certain states with lower TFR, there is aging population. It will lead to more of aging population, right? Because the TFR is lesser, the births In this particular state, let's say the TFR rate is 1.6, 1.7. Obviously, meaning the newborn children number of that is lesser. The replacement level, right, in these particular states, which should be 2.1 or 2.2, it is actually, there is a TFR is much lower in these particular states. It will lead to certain implications in terms of aging population. And when you have a higher aging population, there is a particular ratio. Please remember this. Aging population, there is a particular ratio, dependency ratio. Dependency ratio. What is the basic idea of a dependency ratio? What is the total population which is counted as children plus pensioner, that is below the age of 14, above the age of 60, divided by how much is the population which forms the group of working age population. That is called as the dependency ratio. If the dependency ratio is very high, it means there are too many dependents per worker in that particular household, or let's say in that particular country or the state. The overall dependency ratio for India has declined. But some of the states, because the TFR rate is very low, for those particular states, there will be a higher dependency ratio. That will also have certain implications. And the fourth very important implication is migration pattern. The migration pattern. In some of the states, more population. In some other states, lesser population. Right? This state, population from the first state will start migrating to the second state in search of livelihood, in search of better job opportunities, etc. It will also have an impact on migration. And the fifth and the final implication is associated with the need for the government to invest more money on providing healthcare services, on providing other services such as child care services, geriatric services, old age, right, homes, etc. So there is a higher need to invest money in case of all of these particular areas. So these are certain very important points associated with the first important article, the demographic revolution unfolding in India. Is everybody okay with the discussion? Now, based on the discussion, here is an MCQ. I want all of you to solve the MCQ and tell me what is the correct answer ASAP. Consider the following statements. NFHS is conducted by the Ministry of Human Resources and Development. The dependence ratio has consistently increased in the last 1 decade. India's total fertility rate has dropped below the replacement level. How many of the three statements are true? Do let me know very quickly. Those who have given the option as of now, you have chosen option A. What about others? Option A, I think only 3 is correct. There is one person who says only 3 is correct and another person says only 2 is correct. Let's start. NFHS is conducted by the Ministry of Human Resources and Development. No, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The dependence ratio has consistently increased in the last 1 decade in India. No, this is incorrect. Please have a look at the graphical representation here. Although this year's economic survey has not given a table on the dependence ratio, I've taken this particular picture from the last year's economic survey. That was published last year. That is the meaning. If you see the dependence ratio, right, the dependence ratio, and before I go forward, listen to me very carefully. In some of the books that you are reading, the dependence ratio, they will basically say 0 to 14 and right 65 plus years. Economic survey doesn't take 65 plus, it takes a 60 plus. Right, that is the population divided by, right, basically the working age group. That is called as a dependency ratio. And in the context of India, the dependency ratio in the year 2011 was 64.6%. By 2026, it is expected to have come down, or it is estimated to have come down, right, to around 54%. And it is further expected to reduce to exactly 54%. It is 54.6% by 2026. And by 2036, it is expected to further come down to exactly 54%. So the question is, the dependence ratio has consistently increased in India? No, it has decreased in India. Second statement is incorrect. India's TFR has dropped below the replacement level? Yes, the third statement is correct. Right option for the question is option A. Can we go forward now? Those who are present in the session, awake, please do let me know. Reply to me. Can I go forward to the next article? If you simply say, right, if you do not reply, I'll stop the session. A lot of you will basically say, great, sir, stop the session then. Okay, let's go forward. Next article. There are two articles that I've posted here. Let's discuss combining both of them. That is elections to be held. Today the elections are supposed to be held in Nepal. What are the important points? What are the important points? Listen to me carefully. Last year, in the month of September 2025, there was a revolution in Nepal, Gen Z revolution. It basically happened because the government of Nepal imposed certain restrictions over the usage of social platforms or social media platforms. And when the government imposed a blanket ban or imposed a ban or restrictions over the availability of social media platforms, there was already impending, right? Let's say there was already certain discontent against the government. And with this particular announcement, right, the lot of population, especially the youth population or Gen Z population, started protesting. Many people died. And as a result of this, the Prime Minister at that point of time, Mr. KP Oli, had to resign. Right, there was a downfall of the government. An interim government was appointed. Right, the Chief Justice, right, was basically made the head of the government. And now, after this protest happened, right, after many months, now the elections are supposed to be held today. That is 5th of March 2026. And with this election, what we expect is the normalcy to return. Right, the formation of the government, the policy formulation, and the normalcy to return in the country of Nepal. So what is the important point in this particular context? The House of Representatives. The elections are going to be held for House of Representatives. This House of Representatives, please have a look at the data, will have a total number of 275 members. The elections are going to be held for 275 members. But the speciality in the context of Nepal is, in India, we have first past the post system for Lok Sabha. But in case of Nepal, it's a combination of first past the post system as well as proportional representation. I repeat, the 275 seats will be elected. Right, the 275 seats in the House of Representatives will be filled with a combination of first past the post system as well as proportional representation. Out of 175, the 165 seats will be filled with first past the post system, and remaining 110 seats will be filled with proportional representation. And because this kind of a complex system, it's a slightly complex system. This kind of a complex system is established in Nepal. And there are multiple political parties which are going to field the representatives or the candidates for the elections today. Generally, what has been observed in the case of Nepal is there is a hung House of Representative. Hung essentially means no single party gets majority. Simple. Right? No single party will get the majority of the candidates elected. What is the majority? 275, simple majority will essentially mean 138 candidates, 138 seats. So because of this complex nature of the elections which are going to be conducted, because of this kind of a system, no single party generally gets a majority. And that is where the coalition politics or coalition formation of the government is generally the norm in case of Nepal. This is one very important point. Now you might be thinking, sir, why should we read this? Why should we understand? Reason is simple. Nepal shares border with India. I'm pretty sure all of you know this by now. Nepal shares border with India. And by the way, let me ask you a simple question. How many of the states in India, have their borders with Nepal? Do let me know the answer in the chat section and let me continue the discussion. I will tell you the answer later. So there are multiple states which share border with Nepal. That is, overall India shares a border of more than 1700 kilometers. More than 1700. Exactly, it is around 1751 kilometers with Nepal. And concurrently, Nepal also shares the border with China, that is Tibet and China like this. And that is where the position of Nepal becomes very important for India, or the stability in Nepal, and more importantly, the government of Nepal having friendly relations with India becomes very important for government of India. For example, in Nepal, earlier there was right monarchy. Later, post 2008, there was an element of there was change in the constitution. There was an element of elections, formation of the government, etc. was introduced. In 2015, there was certain changes announced in the constitution of Nepal, and government of India raised a certain displeasure, showed certain displeasure towards these kind of constitutional changes that were announced, and that was taken as an opportunity by China. And Chinese investors or the Chinese government presence in Nepal increased. And especially one of the, right, let's say the front runners now, Mr. KP Oli, who was the earlier prime minister, he is very pro-China government, or his policies are pro-China. And that is very much visible in the context of the Belt and Road Initiative, the projects under Belt and Road Initiatives which are being implemented, right, in Nepal. And Nepal has become part of Belt Road Initiative of China. But please understand, does it mean the whole of population in Nepal is pro-China? Right? Especially in this particular context, no. Reason being, in many of the projects that were announced by China, or investments where projects where investments were done by China, there has been allegations of large scale corruption. There have been allegations of large scale corruption where certain Chinese officials, along with the officials of Nepal, were also implicated. So there is always a division within the population of Nepal now, whether should we, right, basically allow, or we should basically promote the Chinese investments, or we should be wary about the Chinese investment. But one fact you cannot deny in the context of India and Nepal is that Nepal has huge amount of trade relation with India. That is very, very important for them. Right? Trade relation with India is very important for Nepal. And historically, if you see, more than two-thirds of the total trade that Nepal has conducted with its neighboring countries, it has been done with India itself. And earlier, and that's the reason I'm saying, what is the policy of the government of Nepal? It is important for India. The overtures that Nepal government will do with China, it is important for India. Because earlier there was a trade blockade imposed because there were, right, let's say certain differences of opinion, frictions between both of the government policies. And that actually led to Nepal taking a friendly, right, let's say overture, or Nepal becoming more and more friendly towards China. So that is the importance, right, regarding India, Nepal, as well as China relations here. And that is also the importance, or that also shows the importance of the elections and formation of the government in Nepal. Who will form the government now? Will it be a hung parliament? Will Mr. Oli again become the prime minister? If he becomes the prime minister, again he might take a friendly relations approach towards China, which is not okay with the Indian government, etc. Done? Everybody is okay? So these are certain important points in the context of Nepal elections. Now, based on this, I asked you a question earlier. How many of Indian states share the border with India? Which of the following state or states share border with Nepal, not India, right, with Nepal? Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, West Bengal, and Sikkim. What is the correct option? Right, 1, 2, 3 and 5, 1, 2 and 4, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Which is the correct option? The right option is option D. The right option is option D. All the 5 states share border with Nepal. And I've given this in the sequence that I've written. I've written this particular sequence in decreasing order of the length of the border that they're sharing. Is everybody okay? In decreasing order of the length of the border. Highest length of the border Nepal shares is with Bihar, followed by Uttar Pradesh, followed by Uttarakhand, etc. Please have a look at the map. Download the PPT later. Please go through the PPT once again. These are the states. Uttarakhand, right? You have Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Sikkim, and West Bengal. These are the states. Done? Okay, so let me go forward to the next article. What sparked the Department of Defense Anthropic Clash? Right, there are two articles, one in text and context page, and the other one is the editorial. Let me club both of them because it is on the same idea. Department of Defense of Government of USA, not of India, Government of USA, and its clash with Anthropic. What is the issue? Now, one of the things that we can't deny right now is that there is adoption of new kinds of technology in national security that is being adopted by all the countries around the world. Correct? National security and defense. All the countries around the world are incorporating better technologies, new type of devices in order to improve national security and defense. The best example, when you talk about warfare, best example to prove this is when you talk about warfare, the traditional warfare used to be fought with, let's say, weapons. They used to be fought with tankers, etc. Today, the new age warfare is not fought with tankers. It is fought with intelligence. That is artificial intelligence. It is fought with information technology. It is fought with the drone technology, etc. So one of the things that we can't deny is adoption of technology in the national security and defense. But at the same point of time, there is one ethical issue that arises. To what extent we can allow utilizing or incorporation of artificial intelligence in defense? To what extent? Up to what extent? For example, let's say there is a particular government. I'm not talking about any government specifically here. Let's say any country's government. This country's government, in order to improve the safety for its civilians, in order to better protect its civilians, etc., will announce incorporation of artificial intelligence in all of its national security decision making process. But at the same point of time, what if now this kind of a intelligence or this kind of a technology is used to improve surveillance, to improve the surveillance on its citizens? Think of it. Right? To what extent should we allow this? Already there is a concern. Right? A lot of this technology can be manipulated. A lot of technology can be used, right? Let's say to keep an eye on the opposition political party, to basically collect sensitive information which should not have been done by the government, etc. So there is always an ethical dilemma. To how much, right, or to what extent should we allow the utilization of technology, and where should we say this is enough? Where should we simply draw the line and say that nothing beyond this is allowed? And that is where this particular clash between the Department of Defense of USA government as well as the Anthropic has arisen. Last year, the Department of Defense came out with a bidding model, or basically came out with an order saying that we are going to spend $200 million and we are going to adopt or integrate artificial intelligence into the defense segment or into the defense. And what is the use of this? Please understand, for us, artificial intelligence will be used to search information. Correct? We use artificial intelligence, for example, ChatGPT, or for that matter, Gemini, etc. What is the use for common man such as you and me? We search for information. We have doubts. We want a clarification. We want more data associated with something. We want it to, basically create a summary of a document, etc., etc. But for defense purposes, the utilization of artificial intelligence or the chatbot is completely different. For example, in recent times, multiple, let's say activities which have been conducted by the Department of Defense of USA, it is said that they've used the artificial intelligence to feed a lot of data, to ask for the artificial intelligence to provide certain inputs, where based on the input decisions have been taken. Based on the inputs given by the artificial intelligence, the decisions have been taken. So there is always a concern that if there are no guardrails, if there are no safeguards in place, then there can be misutilization or let's say abuse of artificial intelligence. And please understand, artificial intelligence does not think like a human being. It's a machine. I hope you understand this. It does not think like human beings. It is a machine. Of course, you can argue in favor of AI, say that it is rational. It can create scenarios very quickly, right? Human brain cannot function at this particular pace. The brain cannot exercise, right? Let's say control over so much of information, etc., etc. Of course, yes, there is a debate, pro as well as cons as well. But the question is, what if there is abuse of artificial intelligence? What if there is misuse of artificial intelligence? What if it is used to spy on the own citizens rather than using it for protecting the citizens, etc.? And that is where Anthropic basically had certain safeguards, right? It has an AI version, or it has an AI tool named Claude. I'm pretty sure all of you heard of this, right? The Claude AI, its version was given to the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense has been using it. But now the concern that has been raised by the Department of Defense is that there are guardrails within this particular version of Claude, and they do not want these kind of safeguards or guardrails. They want to utilize it the way that the Department of Defense want to utilize it. In essence, they do not want any kind of restrictions to be put in place when they are using this particular AI model. They want to use it for whatever purpose they want to. There should not be any restriction. But Anthropic basically says, if you read about the evolution of Anthropic, initially the CEO of Anthropic was part of the ChatGPT team. They moved out of a particular team, moved out of, right, the ChatGPT team, and they basically said we are not okay with the direction that is being taken by OpenAI. Hence, they set up Anthropic. And it is stated that it is going to be used only for good intentions, and it is not going to allow the misuse of this kind of an artificial intelligence. So that is where there's a clash between these two sides. One side is the government, USA's government, and the other side is one of the major companies in terms of artificial intelligence. And the government of USA earlier threatened that if they do not willingly change the system, give the system without any restrictions to the Department of Defense, they would be using provisions under Defense Procurement Act, which would basically nullify any power of the private sector, or else basically declare, right, that this particular company should not be used for any kind of procurement by any of the departments under the defense. And that has been done by the President of USA now. So this is essentially the debate associated with the frictions that are taking place between the government of USA as well as Anthropic. Is everybody okay? Please do let me know. Now, based on this, I've given a question for you to practice descriptive answer writing. Integration of AI in defense may be the next frontier in modern warfare, but it is fraught with significant risk. Elaborate, 250 words for 15 marker. Okay, done. Can we go forward now? Next article, climate risk must prompt international legal reforms. What are the important points here? I have summarized the article in 3 or 4 points. Let me give you the important points. Whenever you talk about climate change, there is a United Nations, that is UNFCCC, right? Climate Convention, Climate Change Convention, COP28, COP30, etc. will come into your mind. The COP, that is Paris Conference, will also come into your mind. But the debate generally is surrounding the concept of the utilization of resources. That is, the resources that we are utilizing right now, are they causing emission? Answer is yes. A lot of the resources that we are utilizing, they are causing emission. So how do you control these emissions? How do you basically negate the impact which is already caused? I'm simply talking about adaptation and mitigation. I'm pretty sure you've heard of this. Adaptation and mitigation. And whenever there's a talk about the climate change, the impact of it, how do you control it, etc., there is a discussion on phasing out fossil fuels. Phasing out of fossil fuels. Now, in this particular context, generally you will see the countries forming into groups. For example, India on one side will be opposed to any kind of a mandatory phasing out of fossil fuels. On the other side, there will be certain countries which want this kind of a mandatory phasing out of the fossil fuels. In nutshell, Some countries want fossil fuel usage to be discontinued. But on the other side, developing countries such as India will simply say we are not okay with that. And that is basically under the concept of permanent sovereignty over natural resources. PSNR. Permanent sovereignty over natural resources. Group of countries want to restrict the utilization of these resources which are causing emissions, which are contributing to climate change. And other group of countries do not like this kind of a restriction. So what is the solution then? Right? Obviously, member countries will not be happy with these kind of restriction. For example, take USA. Take USA as a prime example. There was a point of time when USA used to drive climate change negotiation talks. It used to lead or it used to head this particular talks about climate change. But today, if you look at the administration of USA, they are not okay with this idea of a climate change negotiation in the first place. They do not want any kind of a restriction which will hurt their interest, economic interest. For example, the current administration basically is promoting the production of shale oil. Right? Earlier, there were restrictions when Mr. Joe Biden was the president of USA. Those kind of restrictions have been removed. Production of shale oil, right? Let's say pumping up of shale oil has increased. USA today is one of the largest producer of crude oil in the international market. And that is the precise reason any kind of a climate change talks, any kind of a restriction on these kind of activities, USA will first say, we are not okay. If you are involved in this, we will not be part of this kind of an organization in the first place. And that is exactly what the USA government is doing. It is withdrawing from multiple global organizations. So in that particular context, what should be the way forward? The writer or the author in this article simply says, we need to contain the production and consumption of these kind of resources because they are causing emissions. But at the same point of time, the other countries, especially the developed countries, should provide access to technology and also provide resources, financial resources for the developing countries for better movement away from burning up of these particular fossil fuels. That is first, let's say debate or first point that has been discussed. Second one is the issue associated with the sea level rising up. Increased sea level, let's say because of melting of polar ice. And the melting of polar ice happens because there is the increase in the average temperature of globe. Now, what is the result of this? When the sea level increases or rises up, there are a lot of these particular continents or a lot of these small island nations. And because these are very small island nations, they will with the increase in the sea level, let's say the sea level encroaching into their island or the land which is present, the encroachment will also increase. They will start to submerged, they will start to be getting submerged into the sea. And that is the reason there are multiple groupings of these particular countries which are asking for better stringent measures or better policies which will help protection from their protection from the submergence. So as a result of this, there is a large scale migration also that is taking place. Population from these particular small island countries, they are moving away. They are moving into other countries. But the problem is, when you move from one country in which you are a citizen to another country, you are a foreigner there. You are not given the same protection as you are given if you are a refugee. There is no concept of a climate refugee right now. So the argument is we should talk about this. We should provide certain protection to these kind of people who are migrating because of the change in the climate. Loss of statehood. Lot of these countries are basically saying 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, our size of the land, that is the basic state which was not submerged, the size of the land was this much. But because of the pace of the climate change, today, a lot of this land has got submerged, The land is shrinking. So there is a discussion about protecting the country, or protecting the island nations. And finally, there is also a change in the maritime zones. For example, you will come across a concept of exclusive economic zones. Easy. right? Coastal zones, exclusive economic zones, etc. If the submergence increases automatically because it is calculated from the coastline, all of these zones are calculated from the coastline. If the submergence increases, automatically the calculated area around these particular small island nations will also keep on changing. So the argument of the writer is simple. We have to take into consideration all of these factors and bring in change in the international regulations now. So we need to implement reforms, legal reforms, taking into consideration these kind of changes in the climate. Now, based on this, here is a question. Consider the following statements regarding alliance of small island states. AOSIS. Alliance of small island states. It is an intergovernmental coalition or grouping. It was established in 1980. India is a member of this coalition. How many of the statements are true? Do let me know. How many of the statements are true? It is an intergovernmental coalition or grouping. Yes, it is an NGO, by the way. It is an NGO, right? It is an intergovernmental coalition or grouping. Yes, this statement is correct. Multiple, right, countries. How many? 39. 39 countries have come together to form a group. So which are the 39 countries? Here is the list. Please have a look at the list later. Download the PPT. Have a look at the list later. You have countries from the region of Caribbean, Pacific, as well as right, Indian Ocean, South China Sea, etc. So these are the 39 countries, and I know some of you will be looking at this particular list either now or later, and you will simply see in the first column itself there is a flag, but the country is not mentioned. It is Belize. Belize, Belize. Okay, so 39 countries. This is point number one. Second, it was established in 1990. Yes, the statement is true. It was established back in 1990. India is a member of this coalition? No. India is not a member of this particular coalition. Of the three statements, two are correct. Right option will be option B. Okay. Now these are, right, important articles in the central page. Now let's go to certain smaller current affairs articles. First one, right, Ashmolean Museum returns stolen art. This has appeared not in Hindu newspaper today, but in other newspapers. I have taken this article from Hindustan Times. What is the importance? Please understand, Ashmolean Museum, right, or Ashmolean Museum, it is one of the oldest museums in Britain. It is one of the oldest museums in the Britain. In fact, if you look at the history of this particular museum, this was set up, right? This was set up back in the year 1683, and this is the first university museum in the world. First university museum, that is essentially a museum which is set up within an university. It is set up within Oxford University. And why this particular, right, museum has come into discussion now? For the first time ever, it has decided to return, I repeat, it has decided to return, right, one of the, right, let's say ancient idol that has been stolen from India. For the first time, it has decided to return one of the ancient idol that was stolen from India. Right, on its part, the museum simply says, we purchased this idol. There was, right, an auction that was conducted, and we paid money and we purchased this particular idol. But later, 5 or 6 years ago, it was pointed out that this particular idol is from one of the temples in Tamil Nadu, and it has been stolen from the temple, and you have purchased this particular stolen idol. And by the way, please understand, when you talk about a lot of these particular museums in the European market or within the European, right, let's say group of the countries like this, a lot of this particular art, a lot of this architecture, idols, etc., these have been taken away or stolen in simple terms, not just from India, but from African countries as well. And that is the reason multiple times there is a debate surrounding this, that these art pieces or the ancient culture pieces, etc., should be returned to the respective country. But their argument generally is that even if we return, do you have sufficient, let's say, infrastructure? Do you have good quality infrastructure? Do you have the expertise to maintain and protect these particular monuments? But anyways, right, so this is important. What is this particular idol about, or what is the idol? It is a 16th century bronze statue of Saint Tirumangai Alvar. Okay, so this was stolen earlier. Now it has been returned. Its original place of worship is the Sundararaja Perumal Temple in the Thanjavur district in Tamil Nadu. These 2 points are important. Please make a note of this. Done? Okay. Next one. Another important article. Just the point is important. Childhood obesity in India is a cause of concern now. It is very rich coming from me, but anyways, right? The childhood obesity issue. India ranks globally second in childhood obesity. There is a study which has been published by World Obesity Federation. It has been published by World Obesity Federation, right? WOF. And according to this particular report, which is an annual report which is published by this NGO, India houses the second largest population of children who are obese. And what is the implication of it? Already in the context of India, when you talk about the population, there is always one concern. The concern is the population, overall population. This is very obese. And if this particular obesity issue is not addressed, then there will be multiple health complications which will be developed. A larger pressure on the healthcare infrastructure will be experienced. Household expenditure on healthcare will be much higher, and it will also have an impact on the economic activity of the population. Now that is for overall population, and generally there is a statement in the context of India. They'll say India houses the highest number of diabetic people in the world. India houses one of the largest populations of diabetic population. But anyways, in the context of the children now, also, India is housing one of the largest number of children who are classified as obese. This is a very important point. Please make a note of this. And obviously, some of you can become happy now. Sir, who is the first? Which country has the highest number of obese children? Right? Obviously, our good friend, on a lighter note, our good friend China. China has a much higher number of population or much higher number of children who are classified as obese according to this particular report. Now, why is this important? Again, the argument remains the same. If the children are obese, then the recurrence, or let's say the possibility of the children developing non-communicable diseases over a period of time will be much higher. It will put a larger pressure on the housing, right? That is basically the finances of the house will have an impact. And it also shows the fact that there is a need for a policy change. Please remember, it is also showing that there's a need for a policy change in India. So what do you mean by policy change? A lot of this particular issue of obesity is associated with the consumption of food, the kind of food habits. For example, in case of India, like many other countries, when you talk about obesity, it is associated with consumption of highly processed foods. The foods which will have high sodium, let's say content of, let's say the fats, etc., which are not good for health. And not to forget the consumption of sugary drinks. So there is a need to make a change in the policy so that the sale of, at least the sale of these particular products to the children to a certain extent can be controlled. One recommendation that you can provide is the concept of front of the label packaging. And in fact, there is a hearing that is happening in the Supreme Court in the context of the front of the label packaging. Supreme Court of India is basically asking the government, can we implement the front of the label packaging? That is, whenever you purchase a product in the market, for example, my favorite product, and I know a lot of your favorite product as well. Whenever you purchase, anything that you, let's say want to consume in the market, information regarding its contents, information regarding the calories, etc., is generally provided on the backside. Correct? On the backside. So the Supreme Court of India is simply asking a question, can we change the system? Rather than putting this on the backside, can we put a label on the front side based on the quality of the food that is packaged? And this is being discussed. This can be given as a recommendation by you people. Now, a question based on, right, the World Obesity Atlas. The report that has been published is World Obesity Atlas. It is an annual publication. It is published by United Nations. It was first published in 2022. A lot of you will basically say first and second, we are clear because you have already given the answer. But we are not clear with the third statement. How can you ask a third statement without giving information? Then my answer to your argument will be I am also behaving like UPSC. Right? Anyways, I'll solve the question. Certain important points regarding World Obesity Federation, WOF. The headquarters of World Obesity Federation is located at London. It is an NGO, non-governmental organization. It was formed in 2014. Earlier, there were different organizations. The merger has happened and right, basically from 2014, this federation started functioning. It will also work with World Health Organization to promote the policies. It will publish the reports giving information regarding obesity across the world, etc. And it published a World Obesity Atlas. And the first publication of this was done, as I've given in the statement here, in 2022. Okay. So third statement is correct. First statement is correct. Second one is incorrect. Right option for the question is option B. Only 2 of the 3 statements are correct. Now, certain updates. Last part of the discussion, certain updates. Right? Lot of articles are basically associated with the war that is happening in the West Asia. One update is USA, the submarine of USA has fired a torpedo and has basically hit an Iranian vessel. Right? It has hit an Iranian vessel. This is the first time that this kind of an activity, that is submarine firing at, right, let's say a vessel and sinking it, has taken place after the World War. And that was claimed by the secretary, right, basically the head of the Department of Defense. The name of the vessel which has sunk is Iris Dana. And please remember, this particular vessel was returning to Iran. It was in the Indian Ocean and it was returning to Iran. It had participated, important point, it had participated in certain exercise, naval exercise, which were conducted in India. Last week of February, the naval exercise was conducted and, right, understand the problem here. In this naval exercise, Iran participated and USA also participated. And while this particular ship or the vessel was returning, right, it has been fired upon and, right, multiple people have lost lives. The Sri Lankan Navy has saved a lot of them and they are being treated in Sri Lanka now. Now, but the name of the exercise, where it participated, that can be asked. International Fleet Review. International Fleet Review 2026. Okay, this is one, please remember. And there is one more, Milan Exercise. Milan Exercise 2026. Right, so it had participated in this and it was returning. Okay, apart from this, couple of more articles, just updates regarding the impact of war that is taking place. The first one, the multiple investors, foreign investors, whenever there is volatility in the global market, they do not like it. They will start dumping the investments in that respective country, start withdrawing the investments. And that is exactly what is happening in India. Foreign investors have started withdrawing money because they do not like uncertainty. As a result of this, the stock market has taken a hit. And when the foreign investors will withdraw the money, lot of volatility will also be created in the forex market because they will sell rupees, purchase dollar. Supply of rupees has basically pushed down the value of rupee. It has fallen to historic low now. It has fallen to the historic low, more than 92 rupees per dollar. That is one important piece of news. Second important piece of news, look at the lower part of the, right, let's say PPT. Morbi. Morbi is a place in Gujarat, right? It is a place in Gujarat, very well known for manufacturing of ceramics. Very well known for the production of ceramics. So this particular, these units, hundreds of them which are present at this particular place, they are dependent on import of natural gas and propane because they need to run the operations. They consume lot of the gas, propane as well as natural gas. And we have discussed this multiple times. India imports a lot of it. And because the supply of this has been cut now, right? Because the let's say production units in countries such as Kuwait are being attacked, the production of the gas has been cut, supply has been cut. Now there is a concern that these particular units in the next 7 to 10 days, if the supply of the gas is not restored, they will have to shut down. Simple. They will have to shut down, right? This is one more update in the context of Morbi. Okay. Next, the oil and gas imports under stress. Yesterday also I've given you an update on this. Government of India simply says there is no threat or there is no emergency as of now. We have sufficient reserves. That is the oil as well as the petrol plus diesel. We have sufficient reserves for the next 50 days. But there is an emergency which has been seen in multiple cities in India where people are queuing up. For example, in Maharashtra, this happened last night. People started queuing up in front of the petrol bunks, being worried that the petrol will be out of stock very soon. So government of India is saying that yes, it is a cause of concern. The supply has to be restored because let's say the strait, right, that particular strait has been closed off now. The supply has to be restored. If not through this particular strait, that is Hormuz Strait, we will try to diversify our imports from other countries. That is one update that has been provided by the government. And the next important update is regarding India's exports. Right? On one side, generally, when you talk about the impact of the war, you talk about imports. Right? Imports being restricted, imports stopping into India, etc. But at the same point of time, India's exports are also getting affected now. The exports of Indian rice, especially basmati rice, please remember, India imports a huge quantity of basmati rice, right? And a large quantity of this particular basmati rice is especially purchased by the countries which are part of the war that is happening now, that is West Asian countries. For example, Iran. Iran purchases a huge quantity of basmati rice exported from India. Apart from this, we also export it to UAE, right? We export it to Kuwait, etc. But because these particular passages or the routes have come under attack, there is a restriction over the movement, etc. Lot of the rice exports, either one, are stuck up at different ports. They are not reaching the destination. And second, new orders. The rice traders have been asked not to take up the new orders because there is uncertainty over the transportation right now. Done? So these are certain important outcomes of the war that is taking place in the West Asia right now. Done? Everybody is okay? So these are the various articles, the concepts, as well as the questions I wanted to discuss with you people in today's session. If you have liked the discussion, do not forget to hit the like button. If you are yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. If you have any kind of doubts or questions regarding the concepts or let's say the things that I've discussed, do let me know. I'll address them, then we can close the session. Any doubts? Okay, done then. So that's it from my side in today's session. Take care. See you next time in the daily Hindu news analysis. Have a great day.